putting in your offense, how do you make it easy for your players to understand, to follow, so they're not confused, and so that they can execute at a high level? Because as we all know, execution promotes results. How do you simplify your offense? Well, I have 5 tips that I use in my offense, and I'm going to show you. These are 5 basic rules that create a foundation for your offense that you can use in an early install period. Then from there, once that foundation is laid, then you start expanding your offense based on those basic principled rules. So I'm going to show you that in this video right now. Before we get into that, welcome to the channel. I'm Coach Ross. This is Coach Ross Football. If you've never been to this channel is dedicated to the spread offense, run and shoot, air raid, all sorts of different types of spread offenses. We talk about passing schemes, running schemes, blocking techniques, all kinds of things that make you a better offense football coach. So if that's something you're interested in, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, if you like this video, make sure you like it. Also, share this video out to other coaches who you may think need it. So the name of the game is simplifying your offense. How do you do that? How do you simplify the offense? Because that's everything that every coach dreams of, is making the offense as easy to understand for your players so that they can execute at a high level. So how do you do that? Well, I'm a firm believer that to build an offense, you need to have that foundation, which every coach believes in, and every coach's belief on the foundation is different based on their philosophies. My philosophy is very simple. Small playbook, high execution on those plays because you are knowing the plays inside and out like the back of your hand that you can execute at a high level. So not throwing much at you as far as plays, but going to execute at a high level. And our number one goal is, with that small playbook, making one play look like 50 plays, because we use a lot of shifts, a lot of motions. But inside those motions, there are rules we follow, and those rules never change. The rules that I'm talking about are rules that I've come up with to kind of implement in my offense, and they have worked. And there are 5 basic rules that I instill in the offense from almost day one, making sure that they understand that these are the rules and these are the rules they have to follow, and everything is built off of these rules, and everything that we build into the offense does not change based on these rules. And we're going to go through these rules one by one, and then from there, I'm going to start doing a series of videos based on these rules, showing you different ways to make a play look different. And we're talking about stick, we're talking about counter, we're talking about 4 verticals, all sorts of different plays that you can make look different based on the rules that I'm going to show you in this video. All right, so here are the basic rules that I like to follow. Again, we're going to go through these one by one in more detail, but I'm just going to go over these really quickly. So, small playbook, more formations than plays. I'm a big fan of formations. Again, based on the rules that we're going to follow in this video, the formations can still dictate the plays. Okay, because of where alignments are and their roles and the responsibilities based off those alignments. So, again, small playbook. I'm a big fan of 4-4-4 as far as starting off with. So that means 4 runs, 4 passes, 4 screens, and everything. And that is your foundational plays. And then from there, you build off of that and you keep expanding, but you don't expand too much. You keep it at a limit, and then you just base formations and then eventually motions and shifts. And again, executing at a high level is going to require repetition. It's going to require good time and practice. But with these rules, that will allow that. So receivers and running backs are aligned automatically based on sets. For example, X is always on the left, Y is always on the right. Running back is aligned either left or right based on the play call, and aligned from trips in 3x1 unless tagged otherwise. Okay, HalfField Concepts. So we're talking like stick. We're talking about like corner, or even fade out if you're running to one side. All right, those are always the same based on the receivers and their number from outside in. So in other words, what I mean by that, numbers outside in, outside guy, most outside guys number 1, middle guys number 2, inside guys number 3. And motions and shifts change the roles of the receivers, but revert back to rule number 3 to understand their responsibilities. And I'm going to go through that, what their responsibilities are in pass plays based on their number. So 1 has this, 2 has this, 3 has this. Now, if we change it in motion, all of a sudden we start a 2x2, we motion to a 3x1. Now the rules change. Okay, so now we call stick over to this side. 1, 2, and 3 have their certain routes based on where they are aligned, and that never changes based on any kind of motion we do, as far as whether it's a fast motion, whether it's a shift. It all is the same because the roles and the responsibilities do not change. And then number 5, RPOs are automatically attached to each run. So in other words, whether we run on bubble screens, whether we run a tunnel screen off the backside, or whether we run on hitches or slants, there is always some sort of an RPO attached to each run because, again, we want to take advantage of that open space that the defense is giving you. Even if we have a run play called, quarterback always has the option to pull the ball and throw. Talking about the first rule, formations, more formations than we do plays. Again, that base is 4, 4, and 4, in my opinion. 4 runs, 4 passes, 4 screens, and then build off of that. So I like to have more formations than I do plays. You have your basic formation, a 2x2. You can move receivers to have a 3x1. All right. You can also do certain things where you have bunch, okay, where the bunch is, and the bunch doesn't change. Okay, so basic roles of the offense for me. Okay, we're going to talk about that, but there are so many different formations we can come into here. We can have an empty on this side as well. Okay, so I'm going to tell you basic rules of the receiver, but number one thing is I try and create more formations, whether they are stacked. There are different things that I can do. The rules still are the same as far as their alignments. Okay, and I'm going to go over that because that's probably the number one rule, or the most important rule, in my opinion, is their alignment and their roles and responsibilities. So that is the number one rule that I like to follow. That's the one that has to be hammered home the hardest and probably the longest and most repetitive, is they understand, because once they understand their roles, then from there you can do anything you want. I said rule number 2 is probably the most important rule because it assigns roles and responsibilities and for alignments. So for example, if we get into our base set, which is our 2x2 set, which is our ace formation here, this is always going to be the same. Always going to be the same unless it's tagged otherwise. So in other words, if we call ace, this is how we're going to line up. We can call ace flip, and we can flip it to where we flip the slot receivers. So X is always on the left. Y will always be on the right. I understand that, my letters are flipped as far as the traditional way. It's just always the way I've done it. So X always on the left, Y is always on the right. So we get into ace, H. If you've watched my previous videos before, H is my do everything type of receiver, running back. He's that hybrid type of guy, the guy that's probably the best athlete on the field, the freakiest athlete, the fastest athlete. So I'm going to be moving him around a bunch, kind of trying to get him scheme different ways to get him the ball. So in a base ace formation, he is always on the left, and Z is always on the right. Now the running back, again, the rule states that in a 2x2 set, his alignment is based on what the play call is. So now the running back has to be a little smarter to understand this. He has to think. So we require the running back to think a little bit more. So for example, if we are running a play and we say we call stick, right? We call ace, stick left. If that's a play call, running back knows that ace is a 2x2 set. He is part of the concept. So that means that he needs to align himself to the left side of the quarterback. Okay, so it's stick left. So we have receiver running stick. Okay, vertical. He is now the swing. So he knows that he has to align to that side because he's part of the concept in a 2x2 set. If we want to line up in a 3x1 set here, typically my rule is Z will always be that inside receiver. H is always going to be in the middle, no matter what side they're on. So if we call early, which is early, H will always be in the middle. Z will always be in the inside. And then typically, unless tagged otherwise, F, our running back, is typically away from the trips. Now, sometimes we can tag it where we have him switch, all right, and you can use a one word for that where we can just switch him. But typically, that is how it's going to be all the time. And then X stays on the left, single receiver side, Y stays on the right, and then it just shifts. So if we go to late, okay, all it does is just change this way. And then we just flip the running back. And then Y still on that. All that changes, nothing changes as far as alignments. H always knows that he is in the middle. H is always in the middle. Z is always on the inside. And that's how it is for a 3x1 set. Now, if we go empty, just move the running back out here, and we're in empty. Okay? Nothing changes as far as we got a 3x1, we got a 3x2. All right, still got 3 receivers to this side. Nothing changes. Nothing changes. We're in bunch. This is just a 3x1 set. So again, rules still apply as far as alignments. Okay, the way we teach it as far as alignment is the X and Y are always going to be the point man on the bunch. Always, whether it's a bunch that's inside, whether it's outside, always the point man on the bunch. And the way we go 1, 2, 3. So in other words, just like our normal early or late set, H is number 2, Z is number 3, and that helps with the route concepts. Again, with the bunch, F's still away from it unless we tag it otherwise. And the thing is it's the same idea, same concept if we just flip it. So H there, Z here. All right. And everything is still the same. Everything is still the same. It's just a 3x1 set. It's just out of bunch now. All right. They still know Y is always going to be the number 1. H is always going to be the number 2. Z is always going to be the number 3. The same thing would be is if we had a 3x1 set and we all of a sudden had a tight end here, or he's an H back off the side here. All right. Nothing changes. Nothing changes. H is still the number 2. Z is still the number 3. All right. Just the formation is different. It's a little outside stack. Still the same thing. Nothing changes as far as roles, as far as responsibilities. And what happens if, say, Z's over here, we just have this kind of funky formation like this, and Z motions in over here. All right. Well, now we've just created a 3x1. So if we're throwing the ball over here, we just created a 3x1. Rules are still the same based on your number. So again, if Z moves over to here, Y is still number 1, H is number 2, Z would be number 3, just like it was in the 3x1 sets that we normally would show up with. All right, the motion just creates that 3x1. That's it. If it's a fast motion, he's still that number 3 man. He's still, if we snap the ball and he's in a fast motion and we are throwing the ball over here, he is still that number 3 man, which is typically dedicated to the flats. He's still the number 3. H is still the number 2. Y is still the number 1. And that's how we work it. And once they understand that, and you rep it, this becomes that much easier to follow. And then from there, you start adding in the wrinkles, you start adding in the tags, and then you're going to see that your kids can perform at a high level because you're not confusing with a lot of things. You're not making them think about a lot of plays. You just need to make them think about roles and responsibilities. And based on where I am on the field, what's my role? Am I the number 1 receiver? Am I number 2? Am I number 3? The running back needs to think, okay, it's 2x2, 3x1. All right. So the role responsibility, if I want to talk about the running back, okay, so if we go, let me get this off here. There we go. So let's talk about the role of the running back. So if we are in just a basic 3x1 set like this, all right, and we call stick over to this side. So we have stick here. He's always going to run that stick unless we tag it otherwise, which we will. Flat here and the vertical here. Well, obviously, stick is for the most part a 3-man route concept. Okay, so the rule for the running back is he's always going to swing away from the trips. And a lot of times we have either a hitch here or a slant, man beat on the backside off a half-field quick game concept. So therefore, that's a rule. That's a rule. Always. We are throwing the ball unless tagged otherwise. And sometimes we tag him in for pass pro if our left tackle or right tackle needs some help in that with that defensive end and just giving him problems. We can drop him in a pass pro, or if we see they're like to blitz up the A gap, need that extra protection up the middle, we can keep him in there for 3x1s. All right, because he's not part of the passing line. He's basically a fail safe, that oh shit throw, where nothing's open, oh shit, throw it out there. So that is a rule responsibility. And again, nothing changes. So we're going to talk real quick about stack receivers. So basic stack formation here. Okay. It's just a 2x2, though, just from a stacked formation. There's, again, Nothing changes off this. All right. X and Y are still the number one receivers. H and Z are still the slot receivers. They're just lined up behind. Now, what happens if, for example, we stack 3? Okay, or we stack it like this, or like this. And now we're in a 3x1 set. It's a weird looking stack formation. But what are the roles? What are the responsibilities? Nothing changes. We still have X being the number 1, H being the number 2, Z being the number 3. Now, if we do that, obviously, typically, a lot of times, that's going to flip. Okay, but nothing changes. They still understand that if you have guys that are in the Z, that are playing primarily that Z position, they understand I'm always number 3 in a 3x1 set or a 3x2 set. Always number 3. All right, H understands he's always the number 2 guy. So you have guys that are going to play those. Now, so you might have some guys that play both ways, both roles, and they need to learn both positions. Actually, a lot of times, I tell all my receivers, you need to learn all the positions because you don't know what's going to happen in the season, obviously. So the more versatile you can be, the more valuable you are. So I personally like to have all my receivers learning all of the routes, all of the responsibilities, all that, because I want to have smart kids out there playing. And once they stop thinking, they play faster. That's the same thing like on defenses and offense. If you are not thinking, you are going to play faster and that much more aggressive, that much you're going to execute that much better. So, in my opinion, the less I have to have them thinking, the better they are as far as performance on the field. I touched on this already in the last little segment there, but again, rule number 3, HalfField concepts, like quick game concepts, like your stick, like your corner. All right. Those are built in as far as roles and responsibilities based on their alignment. So again, a lot of times what we do, and this essentially, if you think about it, is a 3x1 set here. For example, if we got the ace right here and we call stick, it's a 3x1 because we technically got 3 receivers. Now, if we bump it out, to a true 3x1, okay, move him over like that, nothing really changes. It's still, stick, snag. It is a 3-man concept. So essentially it's ran, the same way, just by different responsibilities. So if we were in a true 2x2 set, Z is that number 2 guy, mainly runs the concept. So whether we are running stick or whether we're running corner or snag, so he's got his corner route. If we're running snag, he's got the slant and sit. And then we have the swing or the shoot route here. All right, so slant sit by the number 1, basically the main concept route by the number 2 guy, which is the corner route, and then we have the flats by the number 3, which in this case is the running back piece, is a true 2x2 set. But if it changes, and then we move H over, if we move H over and put Z here, then now, again, based on the rules, number 2 has that true concept. Number 3 is typically in the flats. Okay, so if we're still running snag, since his role is the flats, he's got that. There's our corner. Same thing here, slant sit, and then a lot of times we swing him away. And that's the rule we follow. Out of the base formations, your basic 3x1, your 2x2 sets, that same thing, that's a HalfField concept right there. That's what we follow. Now, if we get into funky formations, which we like to do, then we still follow this same rule right here, where number 1 has either a vertical or he has that slant and sit, depending on what it is. Number 2 typically has that main concept route, whether it be a corner route, whether it be a speed out, whether it be the stick route, and then number 3 typically is always in the flats. Now, can we tag it every once in a while if we see something? Absolutely. Absolutely. We have tags built in to where we can, if we see something, we can take advantage of it. We just make one simple little play call, and then it changes everything. Okay? But the basic stuff that you can build the foundation on is just using these type of rules to get them comfortable, and to get them understanding what to do, what their role is, what their responsibility is, based on where they are on the field. And I keep emphasizing this because it's so simple. It's so simple. And once you hammer it home and you hammer it home early, then you will see that once that foundation is laid, then everything else built on top of that. If we get into bunch formations, how does it work with HalfField Concepts on this? It's still the same. 3x1, still the same. It may look a little different to you. This just works for me. If you do something differently, please let me know. But stays the same. All right, it's a simple 3x1 formation. All right, just obviously it looks different, but the rule stays the same. All right, so if we are running snag, he's still going to have his slant and sit right here. We're still going to run the corner out here because he's got space. And then we're still going to run the flats. We can even run a bubble off of that. That is going to stay the same. Do you have that true crossing effect with the two receivers here? No, you don't. No, you don't. But a lot of times that corner is going to be forced in here on the point man of the bunch, which leaves this space open. And a lot of times you don't see a safety coming outside the hashes to cover this area of the field. So, and on top of that, he's probably going to get a free release to the corner. So, read it's still the same. All right, it just we don't have that natural crossing effect between the slant sit and the corner. But don't need it because again, if you have the receivers understanding where they're supposed to be, they're going to get there quickly. Don't necessarily need it, and the way typical defenses align to this kind of a formation allows for him to get to his space quickly and allows for this space over here in the flats to be open as well. So bunch, treat it just the same as a 3x1. Assign roles, okay? Y, number 1, H, number 2, Z, number 3, or however you feel it. But I mean, again, this just works for me. This is the easiest way. Tell these kids, early, spring practice, whatever it might be, this is your role. These are the roles of the offense and the receivers. This is what your jobs are, no matter what kind of formation you're in. It's still a 3x1. It's still a 3x2. All right. Now, obviously, do we have those little different routes or different formations where we have 4 receivers to one side? Sure, sure. But that's stuff that we add in later that you don't necessarily need to cover unless you're a true team that likes to come out in that 4x1s type of stuff. That empty stuff to where you're really overloading. Okay, fine. You can make some rules for that. I don't necessarily have rules because that's not something I start off with. But the basic rules, build out the foundation. Do I add in 4x1 formations? Absolutely. Absolutely, I have them. All right. But they are more like packaged kind of stuff that we add in as far as wrinkles for each week. All right. It's not a foundation of the offense. The foundation of the offense works well because everything builds off of that. All right. So you're building that, you're laying that foundation, like I've talked about over and over and over again. You're building that foundation. And then from there, you just keep stacking on top of it. But you don't add too much. What you do is you change the looks. All right. This is a different look. Same rules, same ideas, just different look. All right. It looks way different to the defense. If you practice this enough, this is just a normal 3x1. We're just closer together in a bunch. But our rules and our responsibilities are still the same. But for the defense, whoa, now things have changed here. What are our rules and our responsibilities? We weren't expecting them to come out in a bunch. What do we do? All right. While they're thinking, again, what I've talked about in previous videos, if you get the defense thinking, you won. You have a major advantage. If that defense is thinking and not reacting, not playing with their hair on fire, reacting and flying to the football, you got them thinking about what their responsibilities are, you've won. So that's the whole goal of this, is to get the defense thinking. The more they are thinking, the more you are at an advantage. I talked a little bit earlier about rule number 4, basically touched on it. But rule number 4 says motions and shifts change the role of the receivers. And they do. They do. But we revert back to rule number 3, which is where they are aligned on the field. Number 1, number 2, number 3. All right. Motion changes that. So in other words, for example, if we shift H here, we've gone from 2x2 to 3x1. Okay. And say we call stick. So now he's the number 2. He's running his stick route. He's got his stick route where he's running a stick route right here. He's got the flats. He's got the vertical. All right. Because we just shifted into a 3x1. So again, the rules in a 3x1, number 1 has the vertical. Number 2 has the stick. Number 3's got the flats. All right. It doesn't change. If we motion into a bunch, if we motion into any 3x1, it's still the same thing. Okay. Now, what happens if, say, for example, we motion, and this is where the receivers need to think a little bit. But say, for example, we motion this way into a 3-by-1. We motion this way into a 3-by-1. And now we're going to call stick to the left. Well, now F's thinking, okay, well, what do I do? What do I do? We got their stick here, got the flat here, got the vertical here. So how's the rule change? Well, he reverts back to number 3. All right. Unless he's tagged to stay in a pass pro, he swings away. He swings away from the trips. So we can do this one of two ways. We can either do a little bit of a play action with it where he comes around the front side, or he swings around this way to get on the backside of the formation and be in the flats of the backside. His rule's still the same, right? We can just tag it where we can tag a play action fake, or he just swings away from the trips because we've created a natural trips over here, and we're calling stick to the side. Still the same, doesn't change. So again, whatever motion we do, it changes the look. Does not change the roles and responsibilities because all we've gone is from a 2-by-2 to a 3-by-1. And most of the time, that's what motions are. That's what motions are, and you just have to have this repped in early so that it's easy for your players to understand. They need to understand their roles, and this is one thing that I emphasize early with my boys is understand your roles and your positions on the field and your responsibility based on where you are aligned. That's the number one thing. It's number one because once they understand that, then everything else comes that much easier and comes that much faster. And then you'll be executing at a much, much higher level that much faster because they understand. And you're not throwing too much at them as far as plays because that, the more plays you have does not make you a better team. The better you execute makes you a better team, makes you a better offense. And again, revert back to what I said, the less you have them thinking, the faster they play. And the more plays they make on the field because of the speed and the level of their execution. Because they're not thinking, because they already know it. Right? All you're doing is just changing looks for the defense. What happens if we want to motion the running back? Well, it's pretty simple. All right. The rule's still the same. We motion him out, and we call a concept to the side. He's got the flats. All right. So we'll just stay with stick because it's the easiest one to really understand. He's still got his stick route. He's got the vertical. He's still in the flats. We just put him on the flats a little bit earlier. We could even do it to the opposite side. We can tag him into a motion that he motions this way. And we call stick to this side. Again, does not change. He's still the flat receiver. So we can do that with motion with there. Does not change. Only thing that changes is his position on the field. Essentially, his role is still the same because he's that third receiver. All right. The role of the third receiver, if we call it HalfField concept, is he is now the flat receiver. Okay. That's all that changes. That's all that changes. Rule number 5 is very, very simple too. It is just that we attach an RPO of some sort to every single run we do. So let's just say, for example, we are going to run counter. All right. So we're going to run counter to the right here. There's your kick out. There's your wrap. Okay. There. He's going there. Okay. We have the running back. He's got his counter action here. Okay. So we do multiple things here, and this is all based on preference. We have different calls where we maybe even call the screen and attach the screen to it. So whether we attach a bubble to it, okay, and that's supposed to be a block. We attach bubbles to both sides here. Okay, multiple things, and all we're doing is counting the numbers. Where is the numbers advantage? Where's the numbers advantage? If we're running a screen here, does the quarterback have the numbers advantage to either one of these sides? If he does, he's going to pull the ball and throw. If not, we have the numbers in the box. We have 2 high safeties here, and then they possibly split out maybe their apex defender, their overhang defenders, and we have numbers in the box, numbers advantage in the box to run the ball. quarterback can run the ball. So we attach the pass option to every single run. This is not the only thing we do. We can attach now screens here too as well. So we want to block here. Okay, he comes here. We have those little screens there to where they're blocking here. We can attach now screens to it if we wanted to. We could even attach, if we really wanted to, a tunnel screen to the backside or something. Typically, we don't do that. We just call the tunnel outright. All right, but we can do these little now screens, these little quick receiver screens, especially if we see some sort of advantage to the outside, but it's attached to the run game. My favorite thing to do really is just to attach hitches. So your receivers are running hitches backside here. They can run hitches here. All right. For one, this to me, this does one of two things. I mean, you typically do you want your receivers to be physical in the blocking? Absolutely. We work on stalk blocking and all that stuff. However, one thing we can do, especially if we are getting coverage where they just put a safety, they want to keep more players in the box, and we have safeties covering here and there. They're keeping players in the box. Corners are off because they're worried about passing, and they are giving us all the free yards underneath. We just turn around and throw the hitch. Quarterback sees that I have the space to hitch. We've got counter called, sure, but quarterback's just going to pull the ball and throw. All right. So quarterback is always looking for where he has the numbers advantage. Always. All right. Whether we have a call attached to it, and the calls change from week to week as far as what we see we can take advantage of on film. Okay. Or there are plays on the play call sheet where it's a screen attached. Okay. Or if there's no screen attached to it, then it's an automatic hitch call. And so, again, like I said, this does one of two things. This gives the receivers running routes, but also when the defender that is lined up head up with them sees them running a route, it occupies them. All right. Their eyes are now focusing on the receiver because they see that receiver running a route. So that means that they need to focus a little bit more in on that as opposed to the running game. And if that's the case too, they're occupied with that receiver. They are then taken away from the play, which creates a little bit more advantage in the run game. So in my opinion, it does one of two things, okay? Gets the receivers working on their routes, finding that space and taking advantage of that space, especially if they're open right away. And secondly, it occupies that defender that is responsible for that receiver and gets his eyes away from the run game and worried about that receiver, which gives us the advantage in the run game. Those are the 5 foundational rules that I build into my offense right away. It allows for early and fast execution, understanding of roles, and it allows the players to think less. And then from there, the offense is built and structured and added to as the season goes on. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like. Also, consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. And also share this video out to others who haven't seen it that may need the help. Also, remember, too, I mentioned that this video is a base video for new videos that are coming out here in the future about adding in wrinkles to plays, your base foundations, based on these rules that I just talked about. So I wanted to lay the foundation with the video and the rules before I started bumping into additional plays, additional wrinkles you can add into your offense based on these rules. Okay. I know it's a lot of rules and everything like that. Hope you enjoyed the video. I look forward to seeing the next one. Till then, get better.